Hey guys, Brandon Johnson here. Thanks for joining me today. I wanted to make another video about the basics of guitar playing. This is something that I learned when I first started playing, and it's the 12-bar blues chord progression. Now, if you haven't seen my video on the 1-4-5 chord progression, definitely check that out because that lays the foundation for everything I'm about to go over in this video. So, what I'm going to cover in this video is the 12-bar blues chord progression in the key of G, and we're going to use 7th chords. So instead of the major 1-4-5 that I showed you before, this is going to make use of 7th chords, G7. Now, we're going to play a bar chord. So it's a G7 chord looks like that. We're going to add one thing to this that really makes it sound like the blues, and that's the alternating bass notes. So it would sound like this. Okay, so that's a very, very common blues way to play the blues on the guitar. So 12-bar blues, what does that mean? Well, 12-bar blues means that you're taking a 1-4-5 chord progression and you are spreading it out over 12 bars. And you're creating a 12-bar pattern where each chord in the 1-4-5 progression gets a specific number of bars. Now this will sound probably pretty familiar to you, even if you're just starting out on guitar. You've probably heard this before, the 12-bar blues progression. It's very common, and tons of music, everything is, rock music, bluegrass is all based around the 1-4-5. So when we look at the 12-bar blues progression, what is a single bar? Well, a single bar is 4 quarter notes. So if you're playing 1, 2, 3, 4, if that's your tempo, that's 1 bar. If you're playing in 4/4, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1 bar. Okay. Now in the 12-bar blues, it takes the 1-4-5 chord progression, which in the key of G is G, C, and D, and it takes those chords and it assigns a specific number of bars to each one. So a common, and there's several different 12-bar blues progressions. There's different ways to play it, but a very, very common arrangement takes the 1 chord and it gives it 4 bars. It takes the 4 chord and it gives it 2 bars. Then it takes the 1 chord and gives it 2 more bars. And then from there on out, it's 1 bar, 1 bar, 1 bar, 1 bar. Okay? So that might sound a little overwhelming and complicated, but let me just break it down for you, okay? So starting with the very, very first chord. Now, like I said, the 1 chord in the key of G is G. So the 1 chord in a 12-bar blues progression gets 4 bars. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's 4 bars. Now the 4 chord gets 2 bars. So 1, 2, and then you're going back to G, okay, for 2 more bars. Now you're going up to D for 1, down to C for 1, back to G for 1, back to D for 1. Now that last chord, the D, is known as the turnaround, okay? So basically, if you're playing 12-bar blues in the key of G, the chord progression goes G, C, G, D, C, G, D. Okay? I provided a tab sheet for you so you can use that for review. But that's the basic chord progression in a 12-bar blues chord progression. Okay? So let's go over this. Let's go over this start to finish, because you really have to hear it in context to get it. Okay? So, like I said, the first chord, the G7, gets 4 bars. The 4 chord, right, the next chord after the G, the 4 chord, gets 2 bars. Then you go back to G for 2 bars. And then from there, you're playing each chord 1 bar. So D, 1 bar, C, 1 bar, G, 1 bar, back to D for 1 bar, and the turnaround. So let me play this start to finish so I can put it in context so you can hear the entire thing. And I'll just say the bar numbers. So when I say 1, that means 1 bar. Okay. 2, 2 bar, 3, 3 bar. I'm not counting off quarter notes. I'm counting off the bars. Okay. So let's start with the 1 chord, the G7. Okay. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next chord. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. Then back to the turnaround, back to the G. Okay. So if you're thinking about purely in terms of bars, the pattern is 4 bars, 2 bars, 2 bars, 1 bar, 1 bar, 1 bar, 1 bar. So that's 12 bars if you add it all up. So let's go over that one more time, but a little bit faster. Why not? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay, you'll notice there that I played the full 7th chord on the 1 note when I'm doing the... But I'm also muting, so I'm not going... And you could certainly play it that way if you want, but to me it just sounds better if you kind of mute it. You get kind of more nuance and you're not just strumming, you're not just strumming as hard as you can. It's kind of more of a nuanced way to play it. And then you can also do like... So that's the turnaround. There's a lot of little things you can do there. Little chromatic run up to the 5 chord. You can kind of, if you can make the stretch. It's a tough stretch in a G in the key of G, but you can kind of go. I mean that's a tough stretch. If you were up here. It's a lot easier if you're like in B or something like that. But yeah, just mess around with it, especially if you're playing this around and around and around in a band. You want to kind of switch it up. You want to switch up your strumming, add some nuance to it so it doesn't sound so repetitive. But that's basically it. Just make sure you're getting good tone. If you want to do a little bit of muting with your right hand, you can do that. Or if you're not really comfortable with that, you can just take the foundations, start from there, and kind of learn these things later on, as after you get the foundations down of the 12-bar blues progression.